The military junta in Niger just rejected US overtures and mediation efforts. The first contact with the military junta by any US official was made through the acting Deputy Secretary of State, Victoria Nuland. She didn't even meet the head of the military junta himself. Instead, he sent another general to negotiate with her. But as you know, military guys are always stubborn. They refused all her overtures. They refused to set a timeline to return to democracy. They refused the pleas not to deal with Russia. Although they understand the risk of involving the Wagner forces in Niger, but for now, they are not even thinking of any consequence. What they are focused on is they want to maintain power. This is why it is very necessary for the US to always speak out before any coup happens, to always condemn repressive dictators in civilian garb. This is because these guys and their repressive antics against oppositions and human rights abuses are the major reason people are losing faith in democracy in Africa. Also, the lack of democratic dividends plays a major role. How can people be saying they are practicing democracy but they don't gain anything from it? The lack of good governance, lack of jobs, massive unemployment and insecurity, these are things that make people to lose hope. They will support any change, whether it's military coup or anything, just to get out of the status quo. Not that forceful takeover of government is good. No, it is condemnable. In fact, it takes the country backwards instead of forwards. But it's a result of something. It's a cause and effect. If there was good governance in these countries where we have seen military coups in the past, they wouldn't have even ventured to forcefully take over the government. So the United States can start by changing their policy towards Africans. For instance, in Mali, there was an election. That election was flawed and lacked integrity. No one talked about it. Even their constitutional court approved the heist that they call election. What happened after? The military boys forcefully took over power. This same thing happened in Guinea. There was an election that was flawed, but their constitutional court also approved and authorized that election. A few months later, the military struck. So the double standards of the United States is very clear. In the streets of many African countries, the United States have lost a lot of credibility. No one takes them seriously. They see the double standards. Why don't the United States take it seriously like they do in their own country? Look at the way the United States reacted to the January 6th invasion of Congress. Many have been jailed for their involvement in the invasion of the Congress. They have also held a lot of hearings in the Congress. So they don't use the same energy on African leaders who violate the rules of democracy. Yes, Nuland made it clear that they will not send aid to a military government, that they are withdrawing all assistance, even military assistance. But these guys don't care. That's why they are military boys in the first place. What they care about now is holding on to power. Whether they will form a transitional government to get back to democracy quickly enough, they will decide that in the future. But right now, their preoccupation is to hold on as long as possible. The same way the United States didn't strongly condemn what happened in Guinea during the elections and also in Mali, it's the same way they didn't strongly condemn what happened in Nigeria during the presidential election. The presidential election in Nigeria was the worst in Nigeria's recent history. Despite the approval of use of technology, Nigeria's Electoral Commission abandoned the use of technology to transmit the results live, which enabled Tinubu and his party to rig the election in their favor. The US government can't say they are not aware of this. They also sent observers who, of course, would have made their reports known, just like the EU did when they released their report. It was exactly the same thing that many observers said. Even local Nigerian observers, they said the same thing. Up till now, they've never made any statement condemning what happened during the election. In fact, they quickly congratulated him. Of course, Biden didn't congratulate him directly. So they are enabling a political coup. When a military one happens in the future, not that we are saying it should happen, they will be the first to condemn it. But these are the processes that lead to them, as we can see in Guinea, Mali, or even to some extent, Niger. Of course, we don't know if that election was rigged or whether it wasn't rigged, but the guy survived a forced coup in 2021. The United States should seriously reconsider their foreign policy to Africa. Otherwise, they've lost relevance. Many people don't take them seriously anymore. It's not all about money and giving aid. Look at Niger, all the aid coming from EU, US, many countries. It still doesn't reflect on the country. Look at their country, they are still poor. Their streets are dusty. So where is the dividend of democracy? When will it work? Going this way might reach centuries. They are still this way. So people genuinely believe that they can be emancipated without the United States. If people have that belief, that means the US have lost their relevance. This is the exact same reason people are going towards Russia. They treat them as equals. If you listen to Traore's interview, he said that Russia will always sell them anything they want, unlike the US or Western countries that will give you conditions. Do you know how long it took for the US to sell helicopters and fighter jets to Nigeria under Buhari administration? So when you treat people as if they are not equal to you, that with your money and donations that you can always get what you want, this is the result. It doesn't always work that way. People are looking for true emancipation. They want to hold jobs where they will genuinely earn their own money and take care of themselves and families. They want politicians to live decent lives and solve their basic problems like water, like electricity, like good roads, like infrastructure that will enable the growth of the economy. This is what people want. They don't want all this flamboyant lifestyle of politicians who get to power through the back door. They don't even win elections. They are not popular. They believe in their money. They believe that they can use their money to buy everything and get to power. This is equivalent to military coup. In fact, military coup is even better because it's faster. Elections take time and resources to conduct. Look at the time it took INEC to conduct the presidential election. They spent months training their staff. They spent billions purchasing equipment to conduct the election. At the end of the day, they conducted a political coup. And going by their own results, they announced the wrong winner in many states. The evidence is before the Presidential Election Petition Court, who are expected to deliver judgment very soon. If there is good governance in many African countries, the military will never contemplate a coup because it will never be popular with the masses. Yes, if many people are living the good life, they see that the government is spending their money judiciously and making efforts to better their lives. They will always support such governments. People will never support a corrupt government or people who came to power through the back door. They will never support kleptocrats. They will never support people who their intentions only are to enrich themselves and their friends. They don't ever care about the country. Just like Tinubu, whose election is still contested in the court, the first thing he's about to do is to declare war in Niger. Why? It shows he doesn't care about the Nigerian people because the conflict will never benefit Nigerians in any way, especially those living at the border states near Niger. So it's obvious that the US foreign policy is not working despite the billions of dollars they spend in many countries to get the leverage. People still don't like the United States. Most people in Africa see them as having a different standard in their country and having a lower standard in Africa, which is not correct. All humans are created equal. It is in the US Constitution. So why treat Africans differently? It's time US policymakers went back to the drawing board. They need to come back with a better policy in dealing with Africans. You can't fold your hands and feel it doesn't concern you when dictators oppress their citizens in a democracy, which can't happen in the United States. It can never happen. So why do you stand by? Not that you are supposed to invade the countries and do things forcefully, but at least use that same energy you use in condemning military coups. Use that same energy to come down hard on the civilian governments in a democracy that are oppressing their citizens so that they will change and start giving their people dividends of democracy. They'll start working for their people instead of working for themselves. Is it not better and cheaper to approach it this way instead of waiting for them to fail and maybe on the verge of their failing, there's a military coup and you start expending energy in negotiations? Forceful takeover of power is not the right way to go, but politicians give the military the excuse to do that all the time. And when there is a military coup, you see people coming out to support them. Why is that? In Nigeria, for instance, sometimes one is forced to make a comparison between a military government and a civilian government. Majority of the infrastructure we have in Nigeria today were built during the military era. Can you beat that? The so-called democracy and the best form of government can't deliver infrastructure. How is that possible that a military government delivered more infrastructure than a civilian one in a democracy? Yes, it's very possible because the politicians are always focusing on non-issues. They're always focusing on frivolities. How can the Speaker of the Federal House of Reps have more than 20 aides, special advisors that do nothing? Most democratic governments are so overbloated, they waste all the money in governance. The cost of governance is too high. Look at the number of ministers and special advisors Tinubu appointed. All these are just wastages. They waste money as if it's their own. Even if it's their own, they won't waste it the way they are wasting Nigerian people's money. When you compare Nigeria of today to Nigeria of 25 years ago, government revenues of today are much higher than 25 years ago. Taxes are much higher compared to 25 years ago. Cost of living is more than 5 times higher than 25 years ago. What about exchange rate? The naira has become worthless compared to 25 years ago. So upon all this, we had better infrastructure 25 years ago than today. 25 years ago, we had a special fund for road infrastructure. Roads were constructed in many places across Nigeria. Today, many federal roads are impassable. So does it mean that military dictators can deliver good governance better than elected government officials? Is that what it means? These military guys ordinarily can't be compared with guys from the private sector, economists, people that have no military background. They're supposed to know better than military guys. But when you make this kind of comparison, you see that military boys performed better than supposed professionals who were supposedly elected by the people. So when this kind of comparison is being made by people, you know that things have really gone out of hand. This is where the problem lies. The problem is not just the military coups. The major problem is the lack of good governance. Why do politicians give military guys the opportunity and the excuse to strike? That's the main thing. If there is good governance, no one will strike. It will be very unpopular that they themselves might even run away. So going forward, it is expected that US policymakers should make amends and come back with a better policy. If they really don't care about what people think about the United States, their reputation, of course they do. Because if they didn't, they wouldn't be spending all that money to buy influence. Yes, if you give someone money to buy influence, the person will oblige you. But after spending those billions, you still find out that you don't have the influence that you spend that money to buy. And also now at the risk of losing the military base in Niger. Because the military junta are still insisting that the US and France close down their military bases in Niger. The more Western countries pressure Niger, the more people think, what's so interesting about Niger? Is there anything special that people don't know in Niger? Thanks for watching.